Hey, what's going on, guys? Mr. Rouge again, and this time we're talking about the properties of water. The last time we talked, we had gone over these elements. We briefly talked about schnapps and how they were made in a star, how these protons are fusing together to make these elements that are involved in life. So today what we're talking about is water. Water is comprised of hydrogen in two parts. There's 2 hydrogen for every oxygen, okay? So before we talk about the other molecules that are made of carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, phosphorus, and sulfur, we're going to talk about the basics. We're going to talk about water, H2O, which is 2 parts hydrogen to 1 part oxygen. So let's take a look at the properties of water first. Then we'll go into more detail. Number 1, water is polar. Number 2, water forms hydrogen bonds. Water does these 2 little things called cohesion and adhesion. Number 4, water can resist temperature change, and water is less dense as ice, and because of that, it actually floats. That's why ice floats. Okay, so let's take a look at these, starting with water being polar. Well, what does it mean when something is polar? What it means is there's 2 sides to it. So if we take a look at this water molecule, you're always going to see a water molecule that kind of looks like Mickey Mouse ears. So you're going to see 1 big oxygen and then 2 little hydrogen that are pulled to one side. And what happens is this oxygen is pulling the hydrogen down to one side. This bottom side has a slight positive charge. Since the hydrogen are down here, the opposite side has a slight negative charge. Okay, and that's why we call it polar, because there's 2 poles to it, or 2 sides. When we look at something else like CO2, CO2 is actually non-polar. The entire charge as itself is kind of neutral, okay? So because of that, if we take 2 polar molecules, they will actually fit together. 2 non-polar molecules, even if they're different substances, 2 non-polars will actually fit together. However, a polar and a non-polar do not fit. They do not bond with each other. And you guys have actually seen this before if you've ever mixed water and oil. Okay, so why doesn't water and oil want to mix? Well, these H2O molecules, or water, is polar. This oil is actually non-polar. Okay, and that's why they don't mix. Now, if you were to throw, let's say, a cube of sugar in water, the sugar molecules are polar as well, and because of that, the water will diffuse. The sugar will dissolve and mix with the water. If you put a sugar cube in a pure oil solution, it will not break down. It'll stay as a cube of sugar, and it's actually kind of cool to see because it's in a liquid, but it's not breaking down. Okay, so why is this important to biology? Well, since water can dissolve a lot of different substances, that allows water to be a universal solvent, and it allows a medium or a place for our metabolism to take place, okay? Because lots of things can dissolve in water, that allows our metabolism to occur, okay? And because of that, we call water the universal solvent, because so many things can dissolve in it. Next, water forms hydrogen bonds. What that means is, remember that water is polar, it's got a slight positive and a slight negative end. Well, these water molecules are actually going to start fitting together, okay? So if you've ever gotten wet or ever thrown water on something, the water kind of sticks to it, kind of stays. Well, the reason being is that water is forming hydrogen bonds, okay? It's forming these weak little bonds with each other, okay? Next property, water has this property called cohesion, and cohesion results in surface tension. So, cohesion, that prefix co, C-O, means together. This is when water molecules form those hydrogen bonds. When water molecules fit together, okay? When they form the hydrogen bonds just like this. And as a result, when they do that through cohesion, they form surface tension. If you've ever seen an insect able to stand on water or walk on water, it's because these water molecules are fit together so tight, it creates surface tension. And the insects, they're not heavy enough to actually break that surface tension, okay? So cohesion is when water sticks to water, okay? And we'll actually get to see this in class as well. Next, another property, water has adhesion, and as a result, results in capillary action. So, adhesion is when water connects with or bonds with something other than water, something different. That's adhesion. I think of it as adding another substance. So, this is a cool little experiment we could do in class. If you take these pieces of paper and stick them in one liquid, the water will stick to it, and that's the adhesion. The adhesion will be so strong, it'll result in capillary action, which is where this water starts to creep up the paper towel and into the next cup, okay? So since water sticks to it, that's the adhesion. The capillary action is the movement of the water up, okay, up the paper towel. Now, why is this important? Well, this is actually how trees and plants obtain water. Through capillary action, that water just creeps up through the plant, okay? And you could even do in a little experiment, if you put some celery in food coloring, you'll see that the food coloring actually goes in through the entire plant, or through the whole celery. Here's a good little image. You see water sticking together. That's cohesion. Again, co means together. This is water sticking to the side of a glass. If you were to look at a test tube or a glass of water, you'll see that the water kind of creeps up a little bit on the side of the glass. That's adhesion right there, and that's water bonding to the glass, okay? Next, we have water resists temperature change. Why this is important is because the inside of our cell, okay, there's a lot of water in there, and that allows our metabolism to occur, okay? As it being a universal solvent, that was one of the first things that we talked about. But also, since there's a lot of water inside of that cell, it kind of keeps that cell stable. It keeps it in a nice, cool environment to resist the temperature change, okay? Because it takes a lot of energy to raise the temperature of water, okay? So this actually helps us maintain that balance we call homeostasis. And lastly, water is less dense as ice. If we look at each water molecule as liquid, we can see that they're really pretty close together, okay? But as water freezes into ice, those molecules actually expand a little bit and it becomes less dense. As a result, that ice is going to float in water. Well, why is that important for biology? Well, when there's a frost, the ice is going to float up to the top, okay? And the aquatic life, okay, or the life in the water, isn't going to freeze with it. It still has water to swim in, okay? If the ice didn't float, then there'd be a chance that all the life in the water would die as well, okay? So these are the notes that I want you guys to take. Properties of water. Number 1, water is polar. It has an unequal distribution of charge. Like dissolves like. So only 2 polar things will mix, and only 2 nonpolars will mix. If I mix a polar and a nonpolar, it will not mix, just like oil and water. Water is the universal solvent and results in a place for our chemical reactions or metabolism to occur. Water forms hydrogen bonds, which are weak bonds between the 2 hydrogens. That results in cohesion, attraction of the same molecules, which leads to surface tension, the measurable strength that water has on top. Adhesion is when water bonds to different molecules, and that results in capillary action, okay? So adhesion is when the water bonds with glass, paper, etc., anything like that. Next, water resists temperature change, which helps to maintain homeostasis, helps to maintain our normal temperatures. And lastly, ice is less dense. Water is less dense as ice, and that allows the aquatic life to survive through a frost. All right, that's it for today, folks, and I will catch you all next time. Peace.